without a crown. No time for hesitation. If I slip, I won't rebound. Looking life and notice I control my own fate. Disappointment stumbles in. How much can my soul take? But I'm doing this for more than me.
Welcome to the Ideas for the Open-Minded TCast. Here, we explore social issues with unique people and perspectives through productive conversation while purposefully excluding politicism to promote good standalone ideas. Our guests and our listeners are people with open minds and open ears who seek to learn from others so that we can make this world a better place. So let's do this. My next guest on the TCast is Dr. Mike Skivington. He has a PhD in special education, but he's not just an educator. He has a fantastic, intriguing background. He's culturally literate, bilingual, loves music, is an entrepreneur, teaches currently adult education in the prison systems. He's been a college professor. He's taught at the high school level, has fantastic ideas about how we can improve our society from the inside out. Great listen. I hope you enjoy Dr. Mike Skivington on the TCast. Dr. Skivington, a.k.a. Bruiser, a.k.a. Mike, a.k.a. The Oak. Right?
A.k.a. R.I.P.
A.k.a. Yes. This is appropriate to have this chat just before Easter because you also rose from the dead.
Yes.
At one point, and we'll get to all that. It's probably going to be anticlimactic for somebody that wants to fast forward to that point, but it indeed happened somehow. So in terms of places to start our chat, I mean, there's so many different places I want to get, and it's so easy for us to get out on tangents and stuff. And tangents are okay, by the way, as long as they're not entirely political, but tangents are okay. You always haven't been Mike Skivington, PhD, right? And you have your PhD in special education, which is a fairly unique and interesting field, I would say. And what kind of led you to making that decision? And feel free to explain at what point in your life that was or anything like that, just to kind of get a decent background about, how you ended up here.
Okay, well, so in all honesty, I was finishing up my bachelor's degree after 10 years. That's some of the best 10 years of my life, I'd tell you. And that sounds like a joke, but it's not. And I like to tell my kids, I went to some of the best community colleges in the country. So I ended up getting a degree in sociology in the middle of Wisconsin from UW-Oshkosh. And I went on an interview, and it was going to be a sales position to where I was going to be in Chicago 2 weeks out of the year, or out of the month, I mean. And so the interview was in Madison, which is about an hour and a half where I'm from. And I drove back and I thought, you know what? I'm married and I want to spend time with my wife. I don't really want to spend time. Not that there's anything wrong with Chi-Town. I love Chi-Town, but that's just not the direction I went. So both of my parents were teachers. And so I thought, you know what? There was a master's degree program that allowed you to get your license at the same time. And so that's kind of how I got into it. But I've always been a strong advocate for people with disabilities anyway. And so that was a way to find my new direction in my life. And so I started that and I got my master's in 2002. And I taught for 3 years special education at the high school level. And it's kind of fun to be back in Wisconsin because I've had some of my former students contact me on social media.
Oh, wow.
And now they're almost 40 now. So that kind of blew my mind at first. Yeah. So there are some I want to get together with, and I think I'm going to make a t-shirt that says that they survived my class. And, we'll have a little club there and do picnics once a year.
You know how important it is. I know we've talked before about how impressive it is to be one of the teachers that you remember when you're 40. Because there are only a few the older you get. So that says a lot about you.
Right. Well, thanks for saying that. I just had a blast with them, and so after teaching for those 3 years in high school, that really solidified my, my passion for being an advocate for for people with disabilities and marginalized people, all those types of people, it occurred to me that I could be even more effective as a teacher of people who want to be teachers. And so I could spread my kind of influence that way. And that's what led me to Wisconsin-Madison to get my PhD. And then I taught in higher ed for a while. So
fascinating. So, and you had an experience where I think it might have been during your master's program where you went to Mexico. Is that where you did that research project?
So again, getting back to my 10 years of undergrad, all I had left was Spanish. All I had left was a language. And so we decided, instead of a whole year, we would accelerate the process and do an immersion. We were fortunate to be able to afford to do an immersion experience in Mexico. And that was for my sociology degree. But when we went there, we fell in love with the people, the language, obviously the music, the food, everything. We just love people in Latin America and Mexico. And so I always wanted to kind of return to that at some point. And I was fortunate to have an advisor who was like, if you want to go a non-traditional research project, then go for it. And so she supported me all the way. I did a pilot study in Mexico in 2004, where I interviewed staff and people in Mexico regarding disability, like the cultural awareness of disability, because I had trouble finding a lot of literature on it. So, and the point with that was to go down and to see if it could be a full-blown research dissertation project. And so, again, I was fortunate enough to know people who made connections for me, and which is not easy in a country like Mexico, because it's all based on what's called respeto. It's like respect and confianza, which is confidence. And so people have to they're skeptical, which is good. They have to know who you are, know who you know, to kind of be able to get in the door. And then you just kind of can sell yourself once you do that. So we took our kids down and we lived there for a year while I did my dissertation research, and they attended school there. And I came back and got a position in higher ed, and it was a year where it was unbelievable, really. And so it's carried us through till now. We have great family and friends down there and contacts. So
I don't know how to mesh these questions without jumping back and forth, but that time in your life intrigues me quite a bit. And based on what you're doing now, which is adult education in the prison system up there, right? Are there any parallels that you've noticed in terms of either socioeconomics or disabilities or anything like that align with some of the prison population that do you feel like you've been able to either leverage some of the knowledge that you've had and gained during that study, or if you see any disparities or anything of any consequence based on what you see on a day-to-day basis today and what you saw in Mexico during that year?
Right. Well, I'm fortunate enough I've got a little over a year now teaching in a medium security prison in Wisconsin. And by the way, I'd speak for myself. What I'm going to say now is not I'm not a representative of them, of the state of Wisconsin. So not that I'm going to say bad stuff, but I just wanted to make sure that that gets out there. So the school to prison pipeline is a very well-known research literature. And so I see on a daily basis, and I interact with students I have, and I do teach about adult basic education. So, and that means that they're going to get their GED or HSED, which is a little more coursework, a couple more classes. And so they're capable of learning. And so at first it was hard because I just was reminded about how we as a society let them down in terms of their educational opportunity. And so I have students who have difficulty reading, and they have difficulty with math and basic things like that. And so it's not because they can't do it. It's just because for whatever reason, they weren't supported in learning. And that's a whole other podcast, obviously, but
well, maybe not. I mean, those are some interesting points. That's what I'm getting at. Anything like that you notice. I mean, it's significant.
Yeah, well, they tell me things, and I won't go into like specifics, but they tell me things that seem normal to them about their lives. And a lot of it really isn't normal, or it shouldn't be normal, and that's to do with education or their experiences and opportunities they have. And so I just try to be, and this is going to sound conceited, but I just try to kind of be a gift to them, sort of a bridge to maybe success, because people fail to realize that most prisoners get out eventually. And so if we don't have a priority on education, then they'll just be back, because they won't know any other way to get out of their situation that they're in, most of them. So, honestly, I teach a lot of the 3 R's, right? But I also teach a lot of, hey, what's your plan? Who do you have contacted on the outside that can help you, support you? What choices are you going to make? Maybe make different choices. What do you think about that? What are your dreams? What are your hopes? What are your plans? And I've got guys from early 20s through 40s, so we just have discussions about that, because I have no agenda. I'm really there to help them and try to help them as I work within the system I'm working in, which is a giant bureaucracy. We're both kind of, and then they're working through their system separately, but kind of together, so there are days when it's a beautiful thing. It really is. Again, I've got my tissues here, and just in case I get all choked up. But no, but seriously, it's a neat thing, and I wish more people could visit and just kind of see what's done there, and instead of pontificating on the outside as if they know what's going on.
Yeah. So what do you think somebody could gain if they were to be able to put a set of eyes, and work alongside you, or just gain that perspective? Because I think a lot of people just go on, society's message that if you're in prison, then you're obviously an F up, and that's it. End of story. You get what you deserve, type thing. But there's a lot less compassion and understanding for context or even misjustice in a lot of cases. What do you think that somebody that basically doesn't know much, if anything, about the people in the prison system? I mean, learning what the prison system is one thing, and then understanding the actual people in there is an entirely different thing. So they're usually lumped together.
Well, it's interesting, because I had a student early on who said to me, and maybe he perceived me as being judgmental to him or something, but he said, there are all kinds of people in here. He said, people that are behind on their child support, people who don't do petty theft, and it turns into something. And then I had a guy the other day say, I was literally going along for a ride, and I'm sure some of this is exaggeration and maybe whatever, so I understand that I'm not naive enough to believe everything I hear, so that's why I just do a lot of listening, but he was in a car and something went down, and wasn't planning on going to, didn't want any part of that, but just got caught in it, just got stuck in it. And then you've got a lot of guys, selling weed, selling pot, and even though in a lot of the states it's legal now, you know what I mean? So you're just kind of like, oh, wow. And they admit, they've done, they were guilty, and they're just trying to do their time and change their lives, basically, so I do believe in criminal justice reform in general. And I think this isn't getting too political, but I mean, I just think that our population is outsized in terms of society proportion, to society. So I think we are looking at that.
Yeah, I think we're looking at it too. I don't think that's necessarily, I mean, it could be put on a political agenda, but the issue itself shouldn't be looked at politically. And that's all I'm saying too. But I mean, there's socioeconomic and racial disparities all throughout. And then there's the types of crimes, the type of people, and all those types of things that you see. What about, before I put words in your mouth, do you see socioeconomic translation into prison systems or racial disparity and all that stuff that is talked about? Is that something that manifests in the prison that you work?
Yeah, I do. I see that. in a minute, I'll talk about the Spanish speaking folks that I teach as well, because I'm bilingual in Spanish and English. So that's another kind of, I don't know, blessing or gift I get to work with those guys. But there is bias, race and ethnicity. There is bias, socioeconomic bias. After a while, you can kind of tell just by looking at people, like, what they're in for. You know what I mean? It's kind of weird. Not everybody, not everybody, but so yeah. I mean, there aren't any surprises with that. It is everything you've heard of. And
do you ever include that in your discussions? I mean, when you do, you say you do a lot of listening. Do you get a lot of feedback from people like that? I mean, I know, sometimes somebody who's really suffering an injustice by pulling a card, but in so many cases, it's legit. I'm just curious how often that gets brought up from that side of the fence, when they are the ones that have been potentially discriminated against or put in for longer sets of time or whatever the particular instance might be. Do they discuss that with you ever?
I can't think of a specific example. I'm certainly open to them discussing that with me. And I hear a lot of their talk, their back and forth and just kind of, I do a lot of listening that way, pretending I don't hear them, like back when I taught high school, I did a lot of not hearing stuff. I'll just tell them, let's talk about what happened, and is that because of this or is that because of that? And if it's not, I'll say, hey, I don't think that, so I've got more comfortable because when you start in the prison system, they try to kind of like scare you into recognition in terms of these are the things that could happen. And that's good. I mean, it's good training. But I've been there now a while to where I feel more comfortable interacting each day, and I don't feel, what I want to say is I've gotten now a reputation, I think, in the prison in terms of who I am as a teacher that really cools things down. There's been a couple of times when a student has kind of reacted in a way that I thought was kind of surprising. And so, then I rely on my behavioral intervention training as a special educator. And I just kind of, don't escalate the situation and just so, but that's rare,
But you're running right now. You're running on lots of respeto.
Respeto. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Well, they can see if you're fake, I tell them, and I don't give them fake praise like, hey, you're doing a really good job. I sit with them and I say, I noticed that you're doing this. Keep it up, man. This is great. That kind of stuff. And it's been hard the last year because of COVID, because we've been shut down a lot, so, but no, I learn more from those guys than I'll ever teach them. I'll tell you that. So,
wow, that's amazing. Sure. So segue back into the Spanish speaking population. And that's kind of where I tried to kind of bridge this story so abruptly, and I apologize for jumping around, but that's essentially taking that experience that you had and then, having not just learned the language and taken a trip, but actually living within the culture and doing all that kind of stuff. And then having this opportunity. Tell me a little bit about what advantages that's given you in the prison system.
The respect and the privilege of being with people in Mexico and Latin America, because I used to be a college professor, and so I've gone to Chile, Spain, Cuba, Mexico, all over the place, and so I've learned about different cultures and in that way too, and just have enjoyed every minute of it and feel fortunate to have been able to do that. So there are varying levels of English ability in my classes. For example, I have a tutor who has gone through the vocational program, and his English is really good, and obviously his Spanish is really good. And so he helps me out a great deal with some guys that are in my classroom who don't necessarily speak English very well. But I'm the only one in the education school that speaks Spanish. And so that's an advantage for me, obviously, for job security. But it's just for the course in terms of like our society not being more bilingual, so where we feel like people should learn English and we're not willing to learn other languages. So it's kind of an empty argument. And some of those guys we do have, like sometimes there's only Spanish speaking guys in there. So we're really let loose on those days, and they'll tell me their stories. They'll tell me how they got there. They'll tell me about their families back in Mexico. And if people are sick or have died, and how heartbreaking that is for them. Then you get to like, okay, well, Now they want to learn the language and they want to do well and study and make use of their time. And even though they're, possibly going to be deported when they get out. So that's an interesting look at their perspective of time, right? When I see those guys, I think of everyone trying to come into the country currently now, and I just wish people would look at those people as families and not numbers and, all the other things you hear about them, because they really do want to make a life here and do the best they can and, and be safe like everyone wants to be here, So, but yeah, we have some pretty heartfelt discussions. And I learned some slang Spanish every once in a while that I'd never really studied before, because I learned more formal Spanish, which I appreciate. I appreciate that. Like güey or way, not that way. It's like, that's kind of like, man, so that was not in the brochure. T-cast. That's extra. That's added value for you right there.
Yes, I appreciate that. We're all about the street here, as you know.
Yeah.
So is there a different approach for people? I mean, by the way you describe that, it kind of enlightened me in a way where somebody that's locked up is, even if they know long-term, they may or may not leverage some of what they're learning. They feel like on a day-to-day basis, it feels like human progression. The fact is you're learning, you're taking steps day by day, and you have those short-term goals until you get out, right? What is the difference between guys like that or guys that are doing short stints or whatever that you're trying to mentor on the side and get to the point where they won't return or see any of the reciprocity versus people that won't get out? I mean, that's got to be a challenge for you to look at somebody and say, I want to teach you all these things. And I want to teach you how to use them because in 20 years, I might not be here, but you still will. How are you going to leverage that? And how do you inspire somebody like that to keep wanting to learn?
Obviously, if they're going to be there a long time, that I don't really ever look up what they're there for. That helps me. Look at all these guys like human beings. So, and every once in a while I'll take a glance, but for the most part I don't. And so, guys that are going to be there for a long, long time, I feel like they still have stuff to contribute to the world. Because whether it's algebra or whatever in my class, or making a difference within the prison population itself. I mean, they can be leaders there too, if they choose to be, and mentor other people. And it is hard. And I have a guy that has been in a long time. He's going to be in a long time. His reading level is not anywhere near getting to be like a GED or anything like that. So, but he comes in every day, and I think, like I said, I mean, I want to be a classroom that they want to come to, not one that they're going to get yelled at, So, I mean, that's basically my philosophy, So as hard as it has been, I've created a welcoming environment in my classroom, like I did when I taught high school, like I did when I taught college, because I do believe, like Maya Angelou says, people will remember how you make them feel, not necessarily what you learn from them, So I can share the good vibes like that. I think that's a worthwhile kind of mission. The guys that I know that are getting out, what we talk about is, work as hard as you can here. I'm not going to get in your way. I'm going to support you, everything I can do to help you. However, if you don't complete it here, let's talk about ways to get in touch with community colleges and technical colleges when you get out to finish, And so that goes back to the discussions I was talking about earlier about, who's going to help you? Oh yeah, I know there's in Milwaukee, there's a this and that, and so we have those discussions. And so at least I feel like they do know how to be successful, or they do have a plan in place, and really this plan thing goes back to when I taught high school kids with disabilities. They had an IEP and an individualized education plan. And then part of it, when they got to a certain age, was called a transition plan. And it was a very specific set of criteria that you had to go through to make sure that when they left, there was a bridge there to the future, So that's kind of the mentality I have with these guys, And some days are diamonds and some days are stones, right? But it is beautiful when I make a connection with someone who really is really gets it,
Absolutely.
Because they realize I'm not there just kind of blowing smoke.
Kind of gives them purpose, long-term purpose, right? Even if it's, you're going to spend the rest of your life there.
It's part of the routine now, it's you get up and come to class and they miss when I'm not there, I don't know. Life is so much more than the 3 R's, and that's true there too. So, and who knows, like in 10 years, they may have technology that allows them to safely interact with the world,
That would be sweet. Yeah.
I mean, yeah. So, cause now it's pretty paper and pencil, pretty old school, which is a challenge because I've always had technology whenever I've taught. And so,
yeah. Anything big government driven is just going to be behind the times. It seems like all that stuff lags and everybody's still using
yeah.
Word Perfect or whatever,
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I know. Let me go get my dot matrix printer.
I know. I wouldn't be surprised. I wouldn't be surprised at all. I've seen that too.
I can make that sound. Okay.
Good.
I can also make the Wheel of Fortune sound.
Oh, come on.
When they're in the final spin, it's like, okay, and then they're waiting to see if you'll guess it. Ready? You watch next time. I know you got it recorded. I know you record that every night.
No, all my spins hit the zero.
Say Jack Vanna White.
Yeah, my spins hit the zero, and I have to pass.
Mystery guess. I have no idea what it is.
So I have a kind of a random question before I move on to something kind of more entertaining, because you talked about diamonds and stones. I thought stones, that'd be a good little segue into our passion for music and different things. So
right there.
We'll get there. Yeah.
Life is a rolling stone.
See?
Right there. Yeah,
we'll get there. You had a project that I don't think I've ever talked to you about this before, but I saw in your bio the contextual mathematics that you've used before for people with learning disabilities, or I don't know if that has a lot to do with mental wellness or not, but I've had people in my life too who were awakened by that just because of the perspective that it brings. And I didn't know if that was something that you approached in the same way. How does that work?
Are you talking about the enhanced anchored instruction research projects that I was in with in graduate school? Or
yeah, probably. Let's see. Yeah, the effects of contextualizing math for adolescents with emotional or behavioral issues.
I was fortunate when I was a grad student to be involved in really cool research projects, and that one was with Brian Botke at Wisconsin-Madison, and he was a grant writing machine. He would crank out grants like in his sleep. And so, but they were all having to do with that. And he had learned it back when he was at Vanderbilt in Nashville, when he went to graduate school there. And real great guy. The easiest way to hear about that is when you're learning mathematics on paper, like 2D, right? That triggers a certain part of your brain. And so his theory was he wanted a context in terms of, let me just think of the one. So we would do things like we went in and we built hoverboards with these students. And so the whole project, the whole science curriculum was based on measuring, cutting, doing all this stuff with a homemade hoverboard. And so at the end, they were able to race the hoverboards. So they put a leaf blower literally and would go like down the hallway, or sometimes they had a gym. And all of that stuff between design, and because they had like CV pipe they had to make it out of and that kind of stuff, for the cage kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And so all of those pieces were context, were things they could hang on to. And so you could see it. You could kind of see what you were doing. And for some reason, some students learn better that way and retain the information better that way. And so those were fun projects, and he was really successful doing those projects. And another one was they would race model cars, and then depending upon the weight of the cars and that kind of stuff and the distance. And so you can see how it's all kind of math related and between physics and other concepts. That was cool. That was memorable.
So you're teaching the math, but then you're making it into tangible experience, essentially, where they can see, touch, and
right.
feel.
It's like 3D,
Yeah.
So, and we had a great guy named Enrique Rueda at Madison who helped us with the computer, the IT stuff. So he would literally design on his computer a tape measure. So you'd be able to click the tape measure and then like pull the tape out. And this was back in the early 2000s. So I mean, this was cool stuff, So we were like, wow, that's so cool, Enrique. And so that was another piece of it. So he kept doing it years and years after I was done. I graduated in 2006. So who knows how we ended up. It was a lot of fun, 2 years, a lot of stories. So, and nobody cared more about the kids than he did. I mean, that was definitely something that came through for him.
That's cool. That's cool.
Yeah, that's a good question.
Yeah, it was just something that stuck out because I know math is a larger concept than most people appreciate. And it was just interesting to see it in the context of special education. I thought that was really cool. So you're a man of many trades and a serial entrepreneur, and I can relate to all that kind of stuff too. You've been a fan of the
We're just
jams.
distractible, I think.
Yes, yeah, and a big music fan. I know because we've known each other for a long time, and music is kind of or music and basketball maybe, but mostly music is where we kind of bonded. So tell me a little bit about how your entrepreneurial journey has taken since you've got all this stuff on the side. Tell me a little bit about what you're up to.
I mean, first of all, I want the audience to picture both of us with a mullet in the 80s, going to concerts like 3 times a month at the Houston Summit and wherever we could find a concert. I'll just leave that image and let that sink in a minute.
Spend your lunch money on
because I would, I would give anything. Yeah, sick merch. I would give anything to be able to rock a mullet these days, but c'est la vie. But as another aside, I picked up I actually am going to learn the guitar this time. I got an acoustic upstairs that we'll have to jam sometime.
Yes.
But I've got the blisters now, or to prove it. So I started with Horse with No Name, which is 2 chords, but I'm gonna keep going. Pretty soon it'll be campfire weather here.
You'll be amazed how many great songs are only 2 chords. You'll be amazed the more further you get.
I know. Wish You Were Here by Pink Floyd, but anyway, I love music. We did play basketball together in 8th grade, and then I think we both then had a case of stick it to the maniosis in 9th grade, and we were done with formal sports. I can only speak for myself, but
they wouldn't let you keep the mullet and play on the team. That was the big stickler. It's like, look, I know you're trying to recruit me, but
that was the red line right there.
That's right. So smart, so smart.
Yeah, that was the red line. So yeah, I know. So, but and then should I talk about the time I auditioned for lead singer in Poseidon? I mean, that is a funny story.
Come on.
Yeah, don't you remember that?
Dude, you're going to have to refresh my own memory, but yeah, come on.
So I had concert. I'm like, hey, I think I can do it. I had no training whatsoever. I'm like, I want to be the lead singer for Poseidon, which was the high school band you guys were in. And so you're like, yeah, okay, come on over. And I came over. You're like, yeah, okay. And I think it was Judas Priest
living after
either
midnight.
heading out to the highway or living after midnight.
Yes, something.
So
yeah,
I
something
had
sophisticated.
I rolled up. I had the concert T-shirt cut off, probably some moon pants, or what were those called?
Parachute pants.
The parachute pants, bandanas, like nobody's business.
Yeah.
But when it came to sing, I froze and I couldn't get any words out, which made sense because I had no training whatsoever. But I told one of your former bandmates a while ago that you all were very kind to me and let me down gently, and then I just kind of went on my way.
Well, you looked badass.
So I would just I had the look. I definitely had the look.
We just didn't have the milli technology back then to make it work.
Well, I was more style over substance, which I respected. Poseidon was not about that, They went on and to do, I'm not sure what, but it was cool.
Yeah, we'll stop the story there.
Yeah, right. Kids, look it up on the YouTube. So thanks for asking. So I'm just relaunching or being able to re-promote this Music Mayhem, which is mayhemtrivia.com. Shameless plug. And what it is it's a mashup between Wheel of Fortune and Name That Tune. And so what we're doing right now is we're looking to take advantage of the opportunity that Zoom is presented to stream things and that kind of stuff. And so it's just kind of exciting because I've been wanting to get back into this for a while. And now that timing is getting better. And so, but it's a pretty exciting thing because there's nothing like it out there. But no, I love music and I know you do. And your stories that you've told in your book, right? Your book, what was that called again? The Fishbowl or something?
Yeah,
like that?
Life in the
Fishbowl.
So,
yeah. Trying to promote you back. Yeah, I got you. Yeah. So
you left.
But I love music, and someday I will play 3 chords.
I'm looking forward to that, man. I can't wait. You need to so we can be the accountability partners. You need to say, hey man, what do you think of this? And just start texting me a bunch of weird MP3s. And because otherwise, you can get
some
complacent.
tenacious D knockoffs. Yeah. No, I'm not going to.
You'll be great.
I actually do know several chords. I have several. Look at this monster hand. I mean, I can get around that, right there.
Dude, you seriously?
So, yeah,
that's going to be great for you.
I know E, D, C, G. I love G. It's a very recognizable sound.
It's almost all you need.
So I should have brought it down here.
Yes.
Wouldn't it be funny if I had it just right here?
Having a concert. Oh, it's funny you should ask.
Yeah, right.
Already set up. The Marshall behind you kind of lowers.
What was it? Exactly. What did the jazz flute, right? Isn't that what Ron Burgundy played?
Yes.
Oh, I'm not prepared. It comes out.
That was beautiful. I'm glad I have another fan of the Burgundy.
Yeah. I'll text you some videos of me playing. So
that would be awesome.
But no, it's exciting. It's yeah. So that helps, and we're yoga enthusiasts as well. So I mean, it's just a really good time, in our lives, and I feel very blessed and very grateful to be here, and not just here with you, but just it's very cool time.
Yeah, so. And that being said too, if I can switch before we start running low on time, I really wanted to go back to since we went all the way back to 8th grade, we don't have to go back that far, but in terms of rising from the dead, as our class began to, I guess, communicate, it's just ancient times, of course. So once there was a little bit more mass communication and email and stuff like that, people were talking about who have you talked to so-and-so and this and that. And everybody was convinced, including me, it was devastating that you were dead. It's like, oh, yes, Skivington's dead. And you didn't hear that? He died years ago. I was like, are you crazy? I mean, I had this big candle vigil and everything for you, man. It was terrible.
Right.
But during that time, apparently, and I know we kind of went rogue with, between going to Aussie concerts or whatever the hell it was and just trying to figure out life. You took some turns. And tell me a little bit about, because your success story is built upon the fact that you really had to take a stand and overcome even some more significant issues. You want to talk about that any?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, how did I die? Was that ever discovered, or was
because everybody had this. Obviously, if somebody knew, then they would have some kind of tangible thing that said, look, here's the article from the car crash. I mean, that was just the whole thing. It was so mysterious.
Microfiche.
Yes.
Yeah.
Why would you say this if you have no idea? It's crazy.
You're in a library looking it up on microfiche, like an old movie.
It's like 3 hours whipping through stuff.
And then it says, but his mullet survived.
That's all I could see is a storm drain and a mullet.
Yeah. So, it's all about gravity.
So how did you end up steering yourself off the road here?
So I started using alcohol about 13 or so, in that area. It's a little fuzzy. But it's not ironically, but coincidentally, when I quit doing organized sports and other activities and kind of just checked out for a while. And so we did illegal drugs, we did alcohol, we did really whatever we could to forget about what was going on in our lives, or the people I kind of hung around with. And I was very good at it. I went for it. It was that entrepreneurial spirit back then. Looking back on that period of time, it was adolescence, and so I could have used some more guidance and supervision and some mentoring that I didn't get. And I don't know if it would have been made a difference or not, but it could have. So I know why people thought I died, because I just left. I left when I was 17, and I went back to Michigan, where I was born. I just kind of set up shop there. But the funny thing about the problems you have in life, one has in life, tends to follow you wherever you go, So, and I had a lot more freedom where I moved, and things got really bad. And, I would do things like drive drunk. I would black out. And I'm not trying to be dramatic. I'm just trying to be honest. And I really, if this helps somebody, that would be fantastic. And I was really scared because I was out of control. And so I made another move. I moved to Milwaukee. And then about a few months later, I went in outpatient treatment. And that was March 1992. Or no, March 1989. Sorry.
Wow.
March 1989. I know, it's been so long, I forget. But I always say it took me the 90s to get over the 80s. So that's kind of my joke. But if you take that's math, it's not too bad. It's pretty good. So
I know how well you can live.
The other joke I have is I moved to Milwaukee to stop drinking, So, I mean,
I was going to say, but I decided not to. I thought I might get me in trouble with somebody, but it didn't make a lot of sense. Well, I have a drinking problem, so I moved to Milwaukee. I was like, huh?
Right. I mean, it makes total sense. But I was just trying to get away from my problems again, and eventually they came up. I had to confront them. And so I had support with treatment and meetings, lots of meetings. I go to fewer today than I used to, just because, that's been 32 years ago. So I've lived, most of my adult life alcohol and drug free, so except a strong cup of coffee. That is something that I will not give up. So that's really my only addiction. But I see things like this, people having these struggles where I teach now at the prison. So I feel like, I can help people there too. And so, I haven't always been this honest about my past. But I feel like I said earlier, I feel like it's time to really give back. So that's what I'm trying to do. But I've had lots of support along the way. I met my wife after I got sober. So that would have never happened. Like you said, I think you said earlier, all of the stuff that's happened to me and for me was based on the fact that I was able to put 24 hours a day together for many, many days and many years of sobriety. And so I'm definitely very grateful for that.
Yeah. Congratulations. First of all, I know it's not easy. So, and you stepping up and out to be an example for others is invaluable, because I know so many people in my life and in other people's lives, as I explore a lot of these different, social issues and everything, there always seems to be an element of addiction in some form or fashion where somebody's trying to, or a form of escapism, which that's the easiest way to leverage that. And there's so many people that can learn from you just to see the success and to know that, look, it seems like it's such a massive undertaking, but in the scope of life, from the 70,000 foot view, it's this little blip on the radar that can help you to the extent that you can go on the rest of your life and have a fantastic life like you do.
Right. Well, right. And I don't want to leave the impression that after that, everything was fine, because you really what you learn to do is you learn to live every day the best you can. And so some days, some weeks or longer may be struggles, but what you learn is the tools to kind of deal with those in a way that's positive. That doesn't make it easy. And there are days that suck, there still are. But it's a choice, it is a choice. And, like I said earlier, I teach, I talk a lot about yoga at the prison too, because I'm just a yoga enthusiast. I just like saying the word enthusiast. You know what I mean? I say it like that. But I do love yoga because it's not just the poses, it's the breathing and it just really, it calms you down. And it's a beautiful thing that you can be sitting in your cell and literally do yoga. I mean, you can take it anywhere. It's not ever taken from you,
Yeah.
So,
and it's got to be a cool starting point also to just have, again, the respect of the guys, because a lot of times it's difficult to teach people who have been through trauma when you haven't experienced it. Even if you have enough experience correcting it, it always helps to say, well, actually, I have this in my past too. It's something I've also had to overcome, and you get that instant respect, and I'm sure they're more willing to listen to you at that point.
Absolutely. That's so true. We have discussions about it a lot, and not necessarily specifically about addiction and that kind of stuff, but just my court date's coming up and this is what's going down, and okay, let's talk. So,
well, I for one appreciate everything that you've done for these are the people that are so oft ignored, and you've taken an extraordinary path. The long road is often the coolest one too, because you've collected so many experiences along the way. It's not like you just graduated at 26 with all your gold medals and went on to just start teaching stuff. I mean, you're teaching from the heart and from experience. I think you're a great guy, and you actually are able to leverage that to make real change in the world. I really appreciate you for that, man.
Well, thank you. Like I said, I learn way more from them than I teach them. So we just need more decency these days. And, we're all in a struggle. We're all trying to do the best we can. And some of us are just at different places than others. And if someone, can forgive other people, why not forgive someone who's in prison? I don't know. I feel, like I said, very fortunate to be doing what I'm doing, and I hope I'm doing a good job.
Is there anything you would add in terms of ideas? And again, I'm not trying to push you into any kind of politicism either, but as a last thought, are there any ideas that you would have in terms of reform, or things that, even if you don't have a all the way thought through idea, but something that you has observed that needs to change? What types of changes what types of reform would you make in the prison systems that you see based on what you've seen?
I mean, that's really complex. It's a good question. What I've learned in prisons is that each one is its own entity, and for a very good reason, I think, for security reasons that they can do what they need to do in the prison. As an educator, it's hard for me to come into a place and see how things can be different, so but I don't know. I would invest in more in education, and when you invest more in education, it gives it a higher priority. And I don't claim to know everything there is to know about security, or hardly anything really about security in terms of the prison and that end of it, but I think there could be more of an emphasis on education. Like I said, I'm just talking in general, for what I've seen.
Just give them tools to succeed if they can get out. I mean, that gives them a set of tools that they can leverage, as opposed to going back to the only thing they know, right?
Right. I just always have thought, it's a little like the muffler man, where he's like, you can pay me now or you can pay me later, And I'm not just talking about prison education. I'm talking about education in general. It's like, if we don't invest enough at the beginning, where everything's going down, everything's happening, everything's new and fresh and whatever, then we end up with this pipeline. And so, do you want to keep building prisons or keep investing more and more in prisons? I mean, it's a legitimate question to ask people, So I think there could be less people, and then that would make it more focused the education, department, because you would have less people coming in all the time.
Because you're talking about education in general. You don't want people passing through third grade that still can't read at a kindergarten level. There needs to be a remedial stopgap there to where those people aren't tossed out, because essentially they're not going to be able to keep up once they hit there. So you're talking about education in general, just a more emphasis on that.
Right. If we had universal pre-K and even early childhood before that, that would be something that would really be a game changer, in my opinion, because then you'd have the resources there and the staff, and it would be it would be an emphasis. It would be a priority, and that's when everything starts to happen, either good or bad, and then not just educationally, but culturally and opportunity wise as well, So
that's interesting. I like that. That's interesting.
Yeah.
I never thought about that.
Yeah, and it's always funny. Like, I know we're kind of winding down, but one last story. I was in Mexico with a guy that became our good friend, their family, and he was our driver. We met him, and he had a cool taxi, nice guy, very respectful, clean, whatever. And so we were driving. He would drive me we would drop the kids off at school, and then I would go to my research study site school at the south of town. And we would go by this place like every day, day after day, and there was no construction going on. And all of a sudden we go by one day, and it's like there's like gangbusters. They're just going and going and going. And then I said to him, Nicolas, ¿qué está pasando aquí? Like, what's going on here? And he said, bueno, se cayó dinero del cielo. So he said, money must have fallen from the sky. So, and what the reason I tell you that story is because we can always find the funding. If we prioritize things,
right.
I believe we can always find the funding.
If it's important. Yeah. And that's why I appreciate you sharing the idea, because a lot of times people don't have that perspective to think about the fact that pre-K could be that significant. I mean, everybody kind of have a common knowledge that, you have those formative years during 2, 3, and 4 and all that stuff, but you never consider, what an actual formal educational process could do for that. So I think it's a great idea. And, you don't think of it until you think of it. So people like you bringing it out is really helpful. I appreciate it. All right. Well, this man of many hats, thanks you so much, brother. All right, we'll talk again soon.
That sounds good. Anytime, man.
All right, brother.
Have me back.
See you, man.
Don't be sitting down. 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 Gotta go and get it. Gotta move around. Don't be sitting down. 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 Push it to